very close to my heart are the 12 steps of AA. They crop up everywhere now, but they originated in America in 1939, a sort of combination between the Oxford group and Bill W., who was one of the founders of AA. And the aim of AA is it's as a fellowship of men and women who share their experience and their strength and their hope in order to help other people to get sober, as well as keep you sober. To talk of this, I have to talk about myself, I'm afraid. I had trouble with relationships all my life. I began to grow very independent, very self-sufficient, a rebel at home and at school and at church. Henry Ewan says, as long as I keep running after about people and asking, do you love me? Do you really love me? I give the power to voices of the world and put myself in bondage of the world full of conditions. Yes, if you're good. Yes, if you're good looking. Yes, if you're intelligent. There are endless ifs in the world of love. In these years, I continued to grow arrogant, very self-centred, intolerant and demanding perfection. No wonder I had difficulty making friends with girls of my own age, interested only in what I could do well. I don't quite know how, but the most wonderful, patient, caring man married me. We had 4 children. Thomas was first, and he had health problems from the beginning. And Joseph came 3 years after, and then Anne, and she died when she was going on 4 years old. And Ruth was born a couple of years after that. My life during those years of bringing up the children, well, helping to bring up the children, was full of anxiety, nothing but anxiety, totally and utterly self-absorbed. My husband, Tom, worked at Walton Hospital, which was 5 minutes away from where we lived. He was the best of men who did everything he could to help me. But life seemed nothing but anxiety, loads of medications, different kinds, and everything had to be perfect in my warped mind, utterly self-absorbed, running further and further away where God dwells. After Anne died, I was 32 years old. I had a few slipped discs and started to take half a tumbler of whiskey at night. Before 2 weeks were up, I was totally and utterly dependent upon that whiskey, morning, noon and night. I couldn't leave it alone. I needed as much alcohol as I could drink in order to black out. For 10 years, I worked at Walton Hospital part-time to fit in with Tom's hours, setting up and running a medical library for the doctors that turned into the postgraduate centre, with the library still attached. I was answerable only to the physician who took the role of honorary librarian, and I just loved it. I'd have paid to go there. In a blackout, I could function. I could do tasks, but not knowing what I was doing, and afterwards having no memory at all of what I'd done. A lost soul. The Synoptic Gospels speak of sin against the spirit. Through drinking, I let go of any spirit that was left in me. Each day was like a well of dark, thick mud that I couldn't climb out from at all. I would wake up don't let me awaken. Don't bring me back. It was the deepest, darkest despair with no hope in it. There was no control over whether I drank or not because I could not stop. The family lived it while I was in blackout most of the time. And what I put them through was unthinkable. I had short spells in Fazakerley Hospital to dry out. Many times during that 10 years, I had 12 electric convulsive treatments. Eventually, years of it, kind doctors and nurses got me sober for the last time in 1977. I was 42, and directed me to the alcoholic unit, where I stayed for 3 or 4 months. And I met AA. Step 1 of the 12 steps of AA is to admit we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. Like Naaman in Kings, 2 Kings, I wanted someone or something to give me immediate help, but I had a long way to go. And it involved doing what I was told, which at first was to stay away from that first drink, 1 day only, 1 day at a time, stay away from the drink, and to attend regular meetings. And if I don't take that first drink, I won't get drunk. Now, why didn't I think of that, But it wasn't easy anyway. But I took to AA, even so, as a duck takes to water. It seemed to me to be everything that I'd ever wanted. All that I'd been seeking for all my life seemed to be in these rooms and in the literature. People spoke of the same emotions and fears and horrors that were in me. I was accepted and welcomed, and there were meetings to go to every day in Liverpool, sometimes 2 or 3. I was still very, very selfish as far as the family is concerned, making many, many mistakes from the very beginning, but not drinking. Step 2 came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Yes, I'd questioned my sanity many times. Who but the insane would throw themselves downstairs so often? My body's paying me back now, but a prayer was given to me a few years ago, so now every day I'm able to apologise to my body. I found that insanity was not what we did whilst we're drunk. It was the fact that knowing what was going to happen, I kept taking that first drink, knowing it was going to end, but I repeatedly did it every day. So I bought the big book and got stuck in with all my imperfections. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand him, or her, as I added. Having rejected God, but going to my local church every Sunday, waiting until everyone had gone in and waiting till communion was being given out. I would just walk up the aisle, I would get the Eucharist and I'd walk out again. There was nothing to say and nothing to hear. Nevertheless, the step 3 prayer from the big book was taken, and this is the step 3 prayer. It says, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me what thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those that I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do your will always. I typed this prayer and stuck it where I could see it every morning as I awoke. It eventually became to mean much. Because in AA, we speak of God of our higher power, or as we understand God. And so at that time, to turn my will and life over to God was to turn it over to AA, to do what was next, which was step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. I tried to take my life in many ways. The remorse, the self-hatred of what I'd put Tom and the children through was overwhelming. Remembering the pool of vomit I would be lying in at the bottom of the stairs, looking up into the eyes of the 3 children. Remembering other humiliations, several times waking up in hospital, having my stomach pumped, looking into the face of my ex-boss. I am in distress. My inmost being is in fervent lamentations say, how was I going to write it all out, let alone share this? I agonised over this step for months. The loathsomeness of self, the guilt, the remorse, and my pride. We read often about God leading his people out of darkness into light. So all resentments, fears, hurts and harms, they were all eventually written down as instructed by the big book. I was doing an awful lot to help me feel better. There's an awful lot to do in AA, and I had a good bash at every single job, from chairing meetings, hospital liaison officer, public information, prison visiting, tell if I had any message to give, really. By this time, many AA people knew my husband, Tom, for the kindness that he was. He spoke with people when I was out a lot. I broke down one day in my main meeting, and a woman, many years sober, came to me afterwards and said, I've been waiting for you ever since you came. I would like you to stop doing and start being. What I did, define me. It was it really was hard. But this sober woman became my sponsor then until she... In the big book on page... Oh, this is step 5 now. Because this is what I was facing with step 4. You admit to God, ourselves and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So in the big book on page 75 it says, we pocket our pride and go to it, eliminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. I pondered Psalm 139. I was in a small chapel, and examine me and know me. I became well aware of my offences. My sponsor introduced me to an organisation taking its title, Calyx, from the cup that once stupefied, now sanctifies. Tom joined me in this. He joined me fully in it. My journey towards God really began. Step 6 and 7 go together more or less. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And step 7, humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. Is it any wonder it's taking 44 years? More introspection. And because of Calyx and my journey back to church, step 6 gradually happened. In Isaiah 57, He says, level up, clear the way, remove the obstacle from my people's way. And Gerald May is like I desire. I had to start doing the opposite of what I had been doing all my life. When I became angry, intolerant, when I found myself being very selfish, I had to pull myself up and start doing the opposite. The big book gives us the prayer for these steps. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me. A tall order. AA tells us no one among us has ever been able to maintain anything like perfection. We are not saints, but that we are willing to grow among spiritual lines. And these are guides, not rules and regulations. They're guides to progress. In Jeremiah, God expresses his great and unfailing love. I shall build you once more. Yes, you will be rebuilt. AA tells us we're now on a different basis of trusting and relying on God. We must now trust infinite God rather than finite selves. But there's more action. Steps 8 and 9 also go together and shows us we're not finished with works to do. Step 8, made a list of all the persons we'd harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And step 9, may have agreed to go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Richard Rohr, thinking of Leviticus, says, the process of both denying and projecting our fears and hates elsewhere is called scapegoating. I had half a lifetime for which to make amends. When Jesus was preaching in his hometown, he didn't expect to be welcomed. Overall, I was received very well. I had come, as Luke says, to seek out and, of course, apologise, and to save what was lost. Whilst growing up in AA, I fell deeply in love with my husband, Tom, but not before doing him immeasurable damage. Because of Tom, who had stayed through it all, the family had considered my alcoholism as a sickness, and so making amends to them was fruitful. And if I continue to take no alcohol, I can be making amends to them today. Tom died a few years ago. No amount of amends to Tom would have been enough. We come to step 10 after we've done those steps. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. There are different ways to do this step. To me, it means as soon as anything happens in a day which tells me that I'm wrong, I must go back to steps 4 to 9. Admit to myself, to any person that I can admit to, and especially the person I've hurt, see it for what it is, determined to do better, and if needed, make amends. I continually fail. Step 10. The book tells us that we deal with alcoholism at its worst aspect, but we're not a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't come. They wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. Step 11 is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him or her, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Being Lent now and in this pandemic, I've been able to spend more than usual of the day in prayer meditation. We've been deprived of our AA meetings, but with Zoom, it's marvellous. Lots of our neighbours have been communicating with AA all over the world. I'm so grateful that I have been able to see and be with my friends from my regular meetings. With Calix, before lockdown, we were able to have short retreats in lovely places, in the small chapels, so peaceful. It's easy to feel close to God. Isaiah, I exult for joy in Yahweh. My soul rejoices in my God. But oh, to be able to say like St. Catherine of Genoa, my deepest me is God. Step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Isaiah 61, the Spirit of the Lord Yahweh is on me. He has sent me to bring good news to the afflicted. AA says, I am responsible when anyone, anywhere, reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA, it says, to be there. And for that, I'm responsible. Page 86 of the Big Book tells us we're not cured of alcoholism. What we have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. If I do not keep spiritually well, I'm no use to anyone. When sometimes if I'm asked to share, and after my share, I usually end up by saying, I haven't got the words to express my gratitude for this fellowship, for all the people who were there before me, for all those who helped me get sober and are still helping me keep sober. I was thrust down and falling, but the Lord was my helper, says the psalm. The Lord is my strength and my song. He is my saviour. There are shouts of joy and victory in the tents of the just. But we don't get very loud in AA meetings, but believe me, you should see it. The recovery from being on the floor in the gutter, and people, they get so well and so whole with this program, with these 12 steps of AA. We have our own prayer where we say at every meeting and many times during the day, which helps us. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'll end there, thanks.